business owner. So if you buy commercial real estate and you're looking to cash out, so like one of those real estate investors that use the BRRRR method where you buy a property, renovate it, and then cash out and then rinse and repeat, right? Well, one of the things that you want to make sure before you purchase the property, at least what I've seen very successful real estate investors will do, is they'll calculate beforehand what the rent roll would need to be in order to be able to cash out the maximum amount on that loan. So working with a real estate investor, so they purchased a property recently, and currently they only owe about $200,000 on the property, and right now they believe the property is now worth $1 million. And then they said, well, because the rent, when they stabilize the rent, they believe that the rental, they believe that they couldn't get, but because they only had the renter in there for a few months, they believe that it's going to have a tough time getting a traditional loan from the bank and so forth. So they're kind of looking for a loan between the traditional bank and what hard money would be, so that get a decent deal. So one of the things I was bringing together is try to figure out like the numbers here, and I'm going to share my screen to kind of help illustrate this, as if you like me kind of visualize. So they believe the property's worth $1 million, and so they figured out that the net income of the property is going to be about 8,250 dollars. They're like, well, ideally we want 80%, but like if we can get 75% and we only owe $200,000, they'll give us about a $500,000. Well, just the interest prime interest rate right now, as this video is like 8.5. um and because the Fed was up in interest rates. Obviously it could go down, but typically when you're looking at uh deals where it's not a bank deal, but it's not a hard money deal, it's kind of in the middle, you're looking at 1 to 2 points over prime. So that's why we're just utilizing this number, 10.5. But it's just illustration purposes. You could ask some of the lenders out there what their rates are. But so a loan amount would be at that would be $6,861 per month. And then with the taxes and insurance payment, that leaves you about $430 per month in cash flow. You know, now that might be good for you, but the biggest thing is getting that cash out of a $500,000, because then they can buy additional properties. So they're like, this is kind of a long term. I can get, maybe give myself maybe $100,000, use another 600,000 to get invest in other properties, and then rinse and repeat the BRRRR method again. The problem with this, the way this deal is structured, the debt service coverage ratio is 1.055. What is the ideal debt service coverage ratio? Is 1.25. Okay. And just to make sure that you understand how to calculate the debt service coverage ratio. So you got what the net income is for the property, and then you divide that by what the mortgage rate would be, and then you get a ratio. So, like for example, if the mortgage payment of your net income is $1,250, and the mortgage payment is $1,000, then you divide that as 1.25. However, well, the biggest question might be for you is to try to figure out what what is my rental rate need to be. So like if you're buying a property, what does the rental rate need to be in order to buy it, to make sure that I'm going to get the maximum cash out for this deal? Because that's what you want to figure out. right? So one of the ways you kind of do that is you kind of back into it. So if you know what the debt service coverage ratio ideal would be, and it's especially for a deal where you just recently purchased it and that kind of stuff, you want to get the best debt service coverage ratio to the lender because you don't have that big rental history and payments and more tax returns and that kind of stuff. So if you look at it, so if you divide by the monthly income and net income and divided by the debt service coverage ratio 1.25, then you get what the monthly payment would be for that loan. Now what the mortgage payment would be, that doesn't give you what the loan amount would be, because ideally what the you or the borrower wants to get is get a loan amount of 750,000. And we just said that that debt service doesn't work out. So if you know what the ideal debt service coverage ratio and what that payment would be, what you can do is you can back into it. Now, I'll show you the formula to calculate it, which is you get you got all these different ratios, but the easiest way to figure it out um, is just to Google a loan mortgage loan calculator. You know what the proposed mortgage payment would be. You have an idea of what the loan amount you want to be, which you can just do. So 750,000 is not ideal. So maybe you move it down to $725,000 or 700,000, and you put that in the mortgage calculator. You know what the loan amount would be, you know what the interest rate's going to be, and you know what the amortizations would be, 30 years, right? That's based on that is over a 30-year time frame. And then you just back in and then you see if that payment matches what the debt service coverage ratio at 1.25 would be, that 6,600 $100 payment would be. And then you could do it that way. And my suggestion would be, before you buy it, figure out what the mortgage, I mean, the rental rates and that kind of stuff would be, figure out what your taxes are going to be, figure out what your insurance is going to be, and then you can kind of figure out, before you buy into that deal, a good idea of what you can expect to cash out before you do it, because they say you make money when you buy the property, not when you either cash out or sell the property, right? So, all right, well, hey, down the bottom, there's 5 ways of finance real estate. It's just a free article there that you can have at the bottom. But yeah, if you have any questions on this, let us know, and we'll make another video. Thanks.